If you rented movies from the movie rental place and also begged your parents to get you moon shoes once, gather here. A lot of things were available in the 90s that kids today wouldn't get, and the first thing they would wish they had was moon shoes. Kids in the 1990s loved trampolines, and when the moon shoes came around and gave them something like that, in an even better way, they became obsessed. Moon shoes were hollow plastic ovals with foot players suspended by elastic bands. Nickelodeon marketed them in the early 90s. They were basically small trampolines that allowed kids to have a taste of the trampoline jumping experience, but this time it was a personalized experience. With the moon shoes, kids could jump to about 4 feet high in the air. Since this incredible innovation sought to cater to the needs of many kids at the time, it wasn't surprising that it met with a huge commercial success in 1989 when it was first released. Then, in the 1990s, it took off as a commercial hit. The moon shoes were available in over 200 stores in just the US alone. It was also widespread in the UK and in Scandinavia. In 1990, the moon shoes sold 17,000 pairs in the US alone. Then, the fact that it was a limited supply meant that getting it required waiting and anticipation. This anticipation built around it ultimately led to more commercial success. Just in 1991, moon shoes quadrupled in sales as they sold over 67,000 pairs. This was only the beginning of a commercially successful product. By 1998, over 1 million pairs had been sold. However, safety concerns meant that people started to look at the product in a different light. Many people feared that their kids could be too overzealous, bouncing on the shoes, and that they might fall. This led to a decrease in the sales of the moon shoes at the turn of 2000. But unlike moon shoes, this next product's turn only led to an upgrade. Number 9. Disposable cameras. Right now, when you feel like taking a photo, all you have to do is take out your smartphone and take a clean, clear picture with your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, Google Pixel 9, or iPhone 15. But guess what? None of these were present in the 90s. There were no optical zoom phones, 200 megapixel cameras on the phone, 50 megapixel telephoto cameras, or insanely powerful chips that made a 50 megapixel photo phone the standard of a modern camera. People now use their phones to create memories and post on social media. Kids in the 90s didn't have all this luxury, but they had something they could all relate to. The disposable camera was a portable single-box camera with a fixed focus lens. You couldn't even check the photos you took until you went to have them developed. But with the advent of digital cameras and powerful smartphones with cameras that were equally as good as some digital cameras in the 2000s, disposable cameras were no longer a thing. But they continued to be treasured memories for kids in the 90s, just like the Tamagotchis. Every kid in the mid-1990s found a pet in a Tamagotchi. The Tamagotchis were a set of handheld digital pets shaped like a small egg. They contained video games that could be controlled with 3 buttons at the bottom of the case. This keychain-looking toy had a virtual simulation game built in it. Most kids could relate to the characters in the game because the story was taken from popular teen magazines of that time. The Tamagotchi also found love amongst most American kids because it was a shutter button on top that activates the camera. It could also serve as a fancy wristwatch for kids. So it was a multi-purpose device for most kids. It was a pet, a game console, a wristwatch, and a camera. Its widespread commercial success in America and Japan was thus not surprising. But there was one problem with this all-in-one toy. Kids became so addicted to it that they started neglecting every other part of their lives. This was popularly referred to as the Tamagotchi effect. The Tamagotchi game was designed for kids to care for their virtual pet as though it were a real pet, so they bathed it, fed it, and generally cared for it. This was a sort of parent-child relationship, and kids got addicted to their pets. They would take it everywhere they went, always tending to it. It didn't help that the pet would die if left unattended. So to curtail the addiction, schools banned kids from coming to school with the Tamagotchi. Since the pet would die when left unattended, there was no point in purchasing a Tamagotchi, as kids wouldn't be able to take it to school to care for it. On the other hand, this next item on the list was accepted in schools. Number 7. The chain wallet. The chain wallet was the trend for high schoolers in the 1990s. Imagine wearing baggy jeans and rocking your chain wallet that drips down from your belt. That was all the feeling in the world that let your peers know that you knew the trend. Boys would drip into school, ensuring their chain wallets were visible for all eyes. But chain wallets weren't just about fashion. There was also a message behind it. It was to show counterculture and was a symbol of nonconformity, and many people bought into it. The popularity of this fashion item further exploded after musicians, actors, actresses, and other celebrities started using it. But there was a negative side to it. School administrators saw chain wallets as a dangerous weapon that could be used to asphyxiate. They also believed that students could easily wrap it around their fists during fights, which could lead to more deadly blows. As a result, the chain wallet slowly faded away going into the 2000s. While the chain wallet couldn't last long when it no longer could serve its purpose, this next one, it simply upgraded to meet the demands of the time. Number 6. Walkman. Kids today could easily operate an iPod with their eyes closed. In fact, most do not even need an iPod to listen to music or the radio. They could do this on their iPhone, iPad, Pixel, or Samsung. But for kids in the 90s, the Walkman was the holy grail of personal music playing devices. The Walkman is a Sony portable audio player. When it was first released, it required a cassette tape to play with an earphone. The Walkman was credited with creating the headset culture, as it required either a wired earphone or wired headset to listen to the music played on the device. It was so successful that it entered the English dictionary as a term, and many tabloids wrote that the Walkman changed the world the moment it was first released. However, the advancement of technology meant that the Walkman slowly faded from the incoming generation. Smartphones have become so powerful that they can do what Walkman could do without as much hardware. Nonetheless, the lasting legacy of the Walkman remains. Its success was what led to the success of this next item on the list, a video cassette recorder. Number 5. VCR. People born in the 90s will surely remember that they would throw a fit when their sister or brother recorded over their cartridge and they couldn't watch their favorite video. That was the world of the video cassette recorder. After the Walkman's release, cassettes outsold vinyl, leading to the adoption of the compact cassette format. This resulted in companies switching their full attention to producing cassettes for watching video films. The video cassette recorder is an electromechanical device that records videos or audio from broadcast television in analog format. People could record their favorite shows or films on a cassette and then save it to watch later. The sale of VCRs took off in the late 1980s and early 90s. They became widely popular in American households, especially for those who could not afford cable. However, VCRs, being analog technologies, simply could not offer the high resolution that Blu-ray CDs offered after the introduction of DVD players. This led to the decline of tape media going into the 2000s. This was also the same problem with the Nintendo Game Boy. Gamers in the 90s will definitely remember this one. Since the 1970s, when it first distributed the first color TV game, Nintendo has been taking the gaming market by storm. It was the highest-selling game console at that time. Then, in the 90s, it came with yet another improved game that proved to be just what gamers wanted. The Nintendo Game Boy was first launched in Japan in 1989 and then released in North America and Europe in 1990. The Game Boy, powered by a custom DMG CPU chip, was a portable console with interchangeable cartridges. It had a DOCS matrix display, a directional pad for control, a 4-game button, and single speaker, and different cartridges for the desired type of game. This proved to be just perfect as it was met with huge commercial success. The Nintendo Game Boy became a household name in America and Europe throughout the 90s. By 1998, it had close to 119 million units. This was one of the best-selling game consoles in the world even up till now. It was so successful that a revised version, the Game Boy Pocket, which was smaller than the original Game Boy, was released in 1996. This was the same time the first Pokémon game was released, and it further catapulted its success. However, like many technological innovations in the 1990s, newer technology meant that the older ones couldn't meet the standard. The next item was one that left people gaping for their lives. Number 3. The Y2K Bug. Technically, this was a 2000 thing, but it is primarily relatable to people from the 90s. Everyone around the world was getting addicted to their desktop computers. However, with this enjoyment comes a huge financial expense. The memory of computers was too expensive for many people to afford in the 1990s. They could not afford to save files in multiple folders or to have duplicate files. So to save space, computer programmers abbreviated the 4-digit year designation to just the last 2 digits. So in 1996, the storage would read 96. In 1997, it would read 97, and so on. But the problem arose at midnight on December 31st, 1999, as the clock ticked away from 1999 into the year 2000. A widespread computer bug affected nearly every computer system. This computer bug was called Y2K. The scale was so large that it affected nearly every sector, from transportation, banking, and communication to manufacturing and healthcare. This widespread closure resulted in a humongous $600 billion remediation cost. This generated lots of side talks around the globe. Many claimed that the Y2K problem was never really a thing. Interestingly, Y2K became a global phenomenon to the extent that its merchandise, which included sandglasses, baseball caps, t-shirts, and polo shirts, sold in millions. While the Y2K bug was a technology problem, the next item on the list was a culinary phenomenon. Number 2. PB Crisps. Kids from the 90s will remember their peanut-shaped cookies stuffed with peanut butter. Some also had strawberry or chocolate filling. However, as people's palates changed, this snack didn't last into the 2000s. The last item on the list is one that brings memories of the lack of Netflix. Number 1. Video rental stores. Before Netflix and other online streaming platforms, video rental stores existed. This was very common in the 90s, as people would troop into stores to rent their favorite movies or newly released films following their cinema run. But rental stores were more than just a place to rent movies. People went with their families, and if you lived in an area where the nearest store was a mile away, going to the store could be a sort of weekend getaway for the family. Unsurprisingly, the advent of Netflix meant that people could sit in their rooms and access a large catalog of movies. This spelled the end of rental stores. Technology undoubtedly played a huge role in driving a shift in many of the items on this video. However, the Y2K bug was one aspect that made people fear the impact of technology. Nevertheless, it is still something kids today can't relate to. So which of the items on this video would you like to see brought back today? Let's hear it in the comments section below.